That's a pretty cool intro, Rob.
Thank you.
Pretty cool, man. Good job with that.
Epic, yeah.
Yeah, people ask, did Anthony make? Yeah, I made it. You guys get it.
We're gonna have swords in our merch store.
That would be awesome. Everybody's doing cigars. We're doing swords. We actually have a couple of intro things I got to do. All right, so I'm going to be going to Catholic Palooza in New Jersey. I don't know what I'm doing there. I really don't. They said something about like interviewing people or something, so I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing. They gave me a promo code, and the thing with the promo code is because I'm not getting paid to do the event, but I think with the promo code, what I would like to do is get an idea of like what kind of a draw Rob and I have to see if maybe we can do future events.
I can't draw with crap.
Can't what?
Never mind.
No, you can't draw. Oh, okay.
No.
Went right over my head, Rob. Sorry. But to see what kind of draw that we have, to see if we could ever do an event ourselves. And I'll be there to hang out with everybody. You know, it's going to be, I know Enoch's staying at my house. Thursday's going to probably stay at my house. And I'm driving down with Ryan Katsu Rivera. It's in New Jersey. It is, if anybody's in the tri-state area or willing to come up, I think it's only like $40 for the ticket. The code when you buy the ticket is AB27. So the date of the event is July 27th. So just AB27, I figured was a good promo code. Let's see if we could get 100 people. I mean, we can get 100 people together. Maybe me and Rob will do an event somewhere and just do a hang. Like, I don't think we'd ever do like a conference like these other guys do. I think we would do like a hang somehow, like even a men's group or something, or something unique. It wouldn't be a typical conference. You might get a couple of guys that have been regulars on the show, maybe like Joshua Charles, Michael Hitchborn, do something with those guys.
Like there's campsites by me we could get 70 guys at.
Do a camping trip and maybe have, a couple of us give like a short little talk or something, but the rest of the time just hang out and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So if anybody wants to go to Catholic Palooza, it's in New Jersey, July 27th. Use promo code AB27. Rob, I sent the link to the site.
I was wondering what that link was.
Yeah, that link is.
I have it here somewhere.
But just if people just Google Catholic Palooza 2024.
Are they the same link?
It's through Eventbrite. So just Google Catholic Palooza 2024, and you guys will find it.
Palooza. What a name.
Yeah. It's like Palooza.
That's like a 70s, 80s throwback.
Yeah, it definitely
Palooza.
Is. And then we're gonna probably I cut up a bunch of clips from the Matt Fradd Jordan Peterson interview that we're gonna discuss on Locals tonight.
I have something to announce.
Oh, it's
Anthony and I didn't tell anyone, but him and I are going to be on Celebrity Mailbag tonight on censored.tv.
That's tonight?
Yep. I don't know when it airs, but you and I are on Celebrity Mailbag on censored.tv.
What is that? I don't even know what that is.
It's Gavin McInnes's network.
Okay.
And apparently, I guess I wasn't informed of this, but apparently I'm going to be on Celebrity Mailbag. Which is basically our resident impressionist is apparently hosting a show. All right, you guys will see. Yeah, if you guys go to censored.tv, I guess I have to watch this. This is gonna be hilarious. I can't wait to see this.
So wait, is this like you guys already recorded it and he's putting it up?
I didn't have anything to do with this. So this is Hey bud.
What's up, dude?
That's I'm your daddy. Yeah, okay, goodbye.
So did you?
Hi, Iggy. That's
so
Iggy.
So have they like recorded it with you and they're just putting it up now, or they
recorded it? Ryan Katsu Rivera is our Jimmy Akin. He did the Jimmy Akin impression. So
wait, that wasn't Jimmy Akin?
No, it wasn't the real Jimmy Akin. I know it's
what?
Shocking.
I poured my heart out to that man, and you're just now telling me like 3 weeks later?
So he's clearly doing an impression of me, and Rob is joining him. It sounds like. So I'm interested to see someone do an impression of me. I don't know. You just lay on like thick Guinea accent or something. You know what, Rob? Let's play the clip of my dad.
Okay.
Let's go. All right. So you guys have always asked me what I would sound like if I wasn't toning down the accent. Now, I know I'm going to catch crap because I think there's a slight clip of my wife wearing jeans in this thing or something, but I sent this to Molly already because
Dude, you did not send me this.
Yes, I did. It's in WhatsApp. It looks like a garden.
Oh, okay. It's okay. That's what it is. The one sending me farming videos.
Taking me and my wife on a tour of his garden, and you have to wait for the end for the punchline.
And this is the one without
Yeah. My dad, I sent one to Rob where my dad curses in it.
like right away.
Right away. He just drops an F-bomb.
Okay, here we go.
That's potatoes.
Oh my God.
These were from last year. I had some duds left last year. I planted them. Then this is garlic. This is probably ready to go. This here, look at the spinach. This is the spinach pup I eat. Look.
Wow.
Spinach pup I
And
eat.
in between, like as I pick them, I put seeds back in, and then I get new ones.
Wow.
But this only will go for another month, and then
in the because
if you want to get good spinach, you got to do it in August, and then in the fall, it loves the cold weather. This is broccoli and cauliflower.
Cauliflower.
It's like listening into the future.
Wait, listen to the end.
These are all onions.
Now the string beans you don't need to grow on something.
This isn't a string bean.
Oh.
I planted string beans back there. I thought it was string beans.
Okay.
I planted it in the planter.
Yeah.
And I saw two little plants coming up.
Yeah.
I thought it was the string beans. The string beans never came up. This is a weed. Those weeds.
Oh my God.
I'm like, what
That's
the
all,
hell?
that's
I don't
all.
see no damn
He
string
thought he
beans.
was planting string
Probably
beans.
was
He
eating
planted a
it.
weed.
Terrible. Oh. Spring onions?
And look, these are all the
Yeah,
different
that's it.
onions.
That's my
Some are
dad.
red onions.
That's pretty epic. That's funny.
Yeah. So if you guys, it's just there's no R pronunciation. It's like, yeah, you got the spinach over here.
And that's not even the Italian side of your family, right?
No, that is. Yeah. Well,
Okay.
my dad. So, my mom's dad is Italian. My mom's mom is Irish. My dad's side is
all Italian.
almost all Italian. I think he has a little German in there. So, like Kiel, my cousin Kiel is like my dad's mom's cousin or something. So, but yeah, that's a little glimpse into my upbringing.
That's funny.
So tonight, the main story we wanted to discuss was the attempted mass shooting at a church, right? So we had all this stuff, all these ideas. Rob sent me a text. He wanted to get into a few things, but there's a little bit of a twist to that story, Rob. I sent you the tweet that says context.
Man, there's so much.
I did send a lot tonight. I'm sorry.
I really sent a lot. Let me see here. Those are the Frad. Then there's Catholic Palooza. Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So if you hit the one that says context. So okay. So what happened was So all right. So the article is an anti-Catholic terrorist was arrested after entering a Catholic church with a rifle, intending to massacre children and families during a First Holy Communion ceremony in Louisiana. So this guy says, interesting case. The priest's statement says that the guy came in the back door with a pistol on and didn't draw it. Didn't hurt anyone when he had the opportunity to shoot a mom and small kids. Said he heard someone was planning to attack the mass and he showed up to stop them. Perhaps a bit of miscommunication and misunderstanding of an armed citizen, although too young for pistol, he's charged with that, leading to a panic. It seems he never intended to hurt anyone with it and kept it holstered until the Knights of Columbus ushers took it away from him. He will probably get a record for this and he'll be shunned by the community. The information he had turned out to be an empty threat or baseless as nothing else happened. He's also charged with terrorizing, even though he never brandished the gun at anyone. I hope the charges are dropped and he learns a lesson about carrying concealed to stop anti-gun people from freaking out, calling you a mass shooter for being armed. Having a pistol too young, not to trust the threats online and how quickly a misunderstanding can ruin your life. So,
well, good. Now we got to talk about how stupid the Knights of Columbus are.
Well, that's the thing, right? So the whole episode, we were even considering having Rick Barrett on to talk about like defending the mass, but this kind of puts an.
Now, to be fair, it'd be interesting to see how true this.
Yes, that's
is.
Exactly 100%, right?
Exactly.
But it does still add an interesting aspect, right? So I think, Nick, you're from Texas, so I think people are used to seeing a holstered gun, even at mass, right?
Oh yeah, no, we have like when I first became Catholic, one of the first things I saw was one of our ushers who under his coat jacket had a massive Ruger just chilling. And that's pretty common. Like all the ushers are armed.
Now, Rob, do you do concealed or open?
I very rarely do open carry. I'll do open carry if I'm going for a hike in the woods.
I
But
do open
generally,
carry,
but
yeah.
generally it's just concealed because of stuff like that.
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's the interesting part of this, right?
And
So
this Mississippi wants to know what state it
Louisiana.
was. Louisiana.
Yeah, I was in Louisiana.
So that's the all right. So look, this conversation is 100% on you guys because I'm in New York. There is no open or concealed carry in New York. I've never seen any arms at mass or anything like that. So I'm curious to know with the Midwest and the South what your guys' perspective on this is.
That's true.
Because we're kind of defenseless in New York. If some maniac does come in, we're really depending on the men at the parish to step up, and I don't know how people are going to react if it's actually a dangerous threat.
Yeah.
So I'll say of everyone I know that is serious about carrying, and by that I mean like they carry at all times, 98% of them concealed carry. Open carry, the way I see it, open carry can be good in some circumstances where like it can make people more comfortable with it. If they see people carrying, if they see people who are respectful carrying, it can give that kind of good association with people who carry. So there is that advantage there. But from like just a tactical perspective, there's no real reason to open carry instead of conceal carry. Because when you open carry, you can make yourself a target for the bad guy.
That's an interesting point.
Things like this can happen where people who aren't comfortable with it may assume the wrong thing, or if you're interacting with a cop in public, and this is all depending on state laws. Like in Minnesota, if I am asked by a cop, I do have to tell the truth, but I don't have to volunteer that information. So a lot of cops are uncomfortable with guns, as ironic as that may be. So I would never volunteer that information. I would never carry, generally speaking, openly, just to prevent situations like this and other situations.
Yeah.
So I'm very pro Second Amendment, but I would assume the worst if someone walked in open carry my parish. Now I think that is very regional, right, Nick? Like that's probably regional, because I think in Texas people are used to seeing open carry.
Yeah, it depends. I think, yes, I agree with you, Rob. I think like 98% of the gun owners I know conceal and carry for the most part. Like they'll carry in their cars, they'll carry in their persons, but there's a ton of like conceal and carry holsters now that you can, essentially slide into your belt line, which is pretty cool. Actually pretty helpful. But you do see, I would say it's becoming more and more common in Texas. People are carrying open carry. I open carry 1873 Colt 45. Because I just personally still think that that's the best handgun. Fight me, people, if you don't believe me. But
I can just see Nick with a cowboy hat on
and
a revolver on his side.
If you see me in person in real life, one day I should just like film myself doing stuff throughout the day. I wear jeans and cowboy boots, and I carry a Colt 45 on my hip.
I completely can see you looking like that.
I don't usually take the Colt 45 in with me into mass. Just because kind of the whole sitting in pews with the Colt 45 is a little bit, awkward.
Well, that's why you got to get the shoulder holster, man.
Exactly. I've wanted to get a shoulder holster. That'd be pretty epic. But yeah, I would say it's somewhat common. You see it a lot in like markets and stuff, like outdoor flea markets. There's a lot of guys that will come usually with pistols and stuff. I don't really see a lot of guys carrying rifles open carry. I will say I do agree with you, Rob. I think that like tactically it is per se in our time maybe a foolish idea, just because like there's not a lot of guys who do it, so it's not as common.
Right.
Maybe like the one thing that I would say at least it does do good, maybe this could like be something in the future, is I think the more and more people open carry as time goes on, we can have a more healthy gun culture.
I was gonna say in an ideal society, open carry would be just universal for everyone. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But yeah, in our current society, I don't see much advantage. There are times if I'm going to a event with a bunch of other people I know that carry, then chances are most of us will be open carrying just to show off our guns.
Exactly. And yeah, that's just how it is. I will say it's actually funny. What is this? Mea Glos Blues, the Thomist there among you with the big iron on his hip. It's actually funny. People do call me locally and sometimes online the Tumbleweed Thomist. So you can call me that if you like.
You're right about the holsters. I mean, they make holsters now where you can. I mean, I can conceal. I mean, not a big, single action army pistol, but you can conceal a full size Glock 17 or something similar pretty easily now. So
yeah. Plus, there's like all those holsters that have the springs attached at the bottom. So like whenever you pull off the snap or something, it immediately flies into your hand automatically, and you're ready to go. And if you have like a good Glock with 16 rounds ready to go, and you're in like a grocery store or something like that, needing to protect yourself, like you're set.
Yeah.
Well, what do you guys think of the connection between the solar eclipse and the Northern Lights showing, and then all of this mass violence? I was watching Eric
Are you doing okay there,
do his apocalyptophobia thing today. He did a video about like not making too much of that stuff, but there is something to be said, not about the Northern Lights and the eclipse, but there's something about just, it seems like there's a tension brewing in the air with just violence and stuff. I mean, I sent you guys a couple of things, like Steve Buscemi was attacked, then there was a tourist was attacked. I saw in New York a woman, an immigrant was working in a cell phone store, and
I saw that.
She got nearly SA'd, assaulted, and luckily the guy just escaped with like $1,000 worth of phones and stuff. But it just seems like, I don't know if that's just because New York is just immigrant heavy crime ridden place.
I was gonna say, I think we have the continuation of the de-Christianization of our culture, right? So all of the values that our society's had now for 1,500 years is just going out the window. But even worse than that, we're now importing people from entirely outside of that Christian culture in mass numbers. So it's just happening that much faster. And I mean, it's probably engineered, to be honest. Let's face it.
1,000%. Yeah, I think, Anthony, you just live in a terrible state. Like New York continuously. So for those of viewers who do not know, like I'm extremely far right when it comes to firearms, like just extremely far right in that world. And I keep up with a lot of court cases. And New York State is one of the most draconian states when it comes to gun laws. They routinely flaunt, like basically give the middle finger to the Second Amendment, but they specifically also give the middle finger to court cases, even from their own state, where the Supreme Court will take it up. And they will say, yeah, no, you can't do this type of gun control. It's insane. But yet New York continues to do it. So I don't know.
Well,
I think if you want to have guns, you got to
say this in defense of New York. Joe Boca forgot his wallet on the train the other day, and he found it in the lost and found the next day.
Hey, that's
with everything in there.
Yeah,
everything was in there. It was in the lost and found.
So that just tells me that Joe Boca is poor and has no money on it.
And his headphones. His headphones too. It was his headphones and his wallet, and they were both in the lost and found. Which means there was a train worker who found them likely and put them in the lost and found. But you know, if it was somebody, that's still good on them.
Oh man! But see, the thing is, like, that's like normal activity though, and like other countries around the world. In New York, we're like, you know what? I did find this one time. This
you had a little anecdote of a good Samaritan in New York, and you're thrilled about it.
Joe can thank a New Jersey commuter for that.
Oh man, that's funny.
Rob, you were saying you think that we should be on the offensive, though, right?
Well, I forget. You know what it was? I was listening to Josh on the new podcast, Eternal Christendom, and I was just in my mind contrasting that style of apologetic that he's trying to do compared to something like Catholic Answers. And I'm not trying to pit them against each other, because I know Josh is actually writing a book for Catholic Answers, but just the style of apologetic is so different. Whereas I feel like as Catholics, we've so long have been on the defensive, always, being willing to answer questions, but we're always having to defend ourselves. instead of turning around and making the rest of the world like actually stand up for their beliefs and give a defense of their beliefs.
I always try to do that, honestly. So like there's ways to do that where you're constantly hearing Protestants say, where is that in the Bible? Where is that in the Bible?
Mhm.
I'll try to think of Protestant ridiculousness and I'll say, where is that in the Bible? Or I'll write tweets that say, have you accepted Mary as your personal mother and intercessor? You know?
And then put a screenshot of it on Instagram so my phone buzzes all
yeah,
day.
it was the first time we got ratioed on Instagram. It's actually pretty funny.
Oh, brother.
But yeah,
But, you know,
you're right though.
Just thinking about like this thing at mass, which, like you said, it ended up being entirely different. But like, we're always having to defend ourselves, and even though when I tweet something like, "Make sure you carry to mass so you can defend yourself," you get all these people that come out of the woodworks that say, "No, you should just be ready to die and become a martyr." It's like, first off, being killed at mass doesn't necessarily make you a martyr. Like, I don't think you know what martyrdom is if that's what you believe. And second off, like, yeah, I might be ready to become a martyr, but my duty is to protect my family and kids.
Yeah.
And also my duty is to be there for my wife and my children.
Yeah.
Like,
do we have the video? Do we have the video of the thing in the mass? I think we do in that article. Right?
I can grab it real quick. Yeah. Yeah.
Let's check the video out because I think the priests were clearly shaken.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were confused.
I'd like everybody to be seated for just a moment.
Yo, good on these men though.
Yeah.
For even the perceived threat.
Yeah. Most things these days, you just get a video after of the person going up to the priest and hitting them or shooting them. Or
I would like everyone to join me in prayer. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God.
Yeah, like how many videos have we seen? Oh, I shouldn't talk to Hail Mary.
Hail Mary, full of grace.
I can mute it.
Well, how many videos have we seen of something crazy happening at mass and the men are just sitting there doing nothing? I think after seeing some of those videos, I think a lot of men are on high alert. It's kind of like if you tried to pull something on an airplane now, ever since 9/11, people just jump right into action. But I mean, if you tried doing something like that at my parish, I'm pretty sure the men would jump up and jump right into action.
Yeah. We've had a few times where like really, so whenever I went to mass in Austin before our parish got nuked, we would routinely have homeless people that lived outside because, you know, Austin's a communist city and homeless people would wander in, and sometimes, you know, they would just chill in the back and enjoy the services, and that's fine, they're welcome. But then because of the, you know, like massive amounts of drugs and stuff on the street, sometimes you'd have people who just come in and randomly decide, hey, I'm just going to protest the thing. I'm not going to spout any ideology. I'm just going to tell you about how God is a woman and how it's speaking to me under the tree, and you need to know about it and take these shrooms and you'll be able to hear it with me, you know, like just crazy wild stuff. I've had it at the society chapel too, all kinds of stuff. But yeah, like it's good on these dudes for standing up, because to your point, Rob, like martyrdom is basically like like willing to be a martyr is basically the perfection of the virtue of fortitude. Like you're willing to sacrifice your body and your life for God. But that's in a situation where you're, you know, if you will, forced into that. In the normal state, according to the fifth commandment, like you have a right to self-protection because like preserving your own life is according to the natural law. And if you're a dad, like you got to defend your wife and kids, which is also according to the natural law.
And like being killed in an indiscriminate act of violence that just happens to take place at mass, isn't martyrdom. And especially if like you were trying to run away, like. But martyrdom is you need to be willing. So in most cases, something like that's probably not martyrdom.
Yeah, it's a tragedy, but it's like martyrdom is you standing up and saying like you're defenseless, but you know, it's like, you know, I'm going to kill everybody in here and I'm going to destroy the Eucharist, and you try to defend everybody or save the Eucharist or something to that effect, and then you're murdered.
Yeah, we kind of delved into this with Father Nix a little bit in one of our Faith and Film episodes. And it's I think Rob asked, like, is it okay to defend the desecration of the Eucharist with force like that? And I think Father Nick said no, probably not, right?
It was, yeah, he said he'd want to check some things, but just off the cuff, he would say it might not be justified to use deadly force to protect the Eucharist, is what he thought just off the cuff.
Yeah,
I
I'd
don't
love
know if
for
he's
him
looked
to.
into it.
That'd be epic if he looked into it and give a full answer, because I'm curious on that. It's interesting.
St. Thomas doesn't say anything about AK-47s at
He does say he does say this much. He does say this much. He does talk about, it's in the context actually of the famous passage on communion on the hand that he refers to. I mean, they don't call it that back then, because they would have been like, what's that?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? But he said the only time that the lay people are allowed to, touch the Eucharist are if they're picking it off the floor. And a lot of this, again, even that was kind of written before the Rituale today, which kind of tells you how to, take care of accidents like that. He said that, or if you're trying to stop desecration from taking place. And so I'm thinking, especially in his context, and this still happens today, like witches and stuff going into parishes, right? And they would just try to receive or steal stuff from the tabernacle, etc. But those penances, though, back then, even for like small, what we would consider small Eucharistic like accidents, would be severe. So just as an example, if a drop of the precious blood was to land on the altar veil, right? Depending on how far it sunk down to which of the altar cloths, the priest would have to do up to 40 to 80 days of penance. So think of basically like a Lent or 2 Lents based off of that. Like that's how serious the church treated the blood of Christ. And now it's just like, hey,
Nowadays the
it
church
reminds-
promotes sacrilege far worse than that.
yeah, exactly.
It reminds me of the scene in Vikings when the first time they go in and they go into the Catholic Mass,
Ross.
and the Vikings, like, they take the blood from the priest, and like he takes a sip of it and he spits it out, and the whole crowd is horrified. Right. And it's
horrible.
almost like we're so desensitized now. I don't think people would even think that was a big deal now, but they
Freaking
did show. Yeah, it was Floki. They did show how, like, they were so horrified that they would desecrate the blood of Christ like that in that show. I only thought of that because I just watched that episode recently.
Dang, I've never seen it. I've only heard people like meme and say, and tell me if this is true or not, like that there's black Vikings.
No.
In that series. I've heard
No.
someone say that, or maybe it was like a proposal back in the day. But they were talking about. I mean, we'll discuss it. Maybe we want to lead into this, but like all the DEI stuff.
Yeah, so
like
that's our next topic. So go ahead.
DEI and entertainment. It's just so it's destroyed. Entertainment. And so you would hear people talk about stuff like, yeah, can we have like, a black king of England in the 13th century and make a TV show out of that? And you're just like, okay, well,
you saw Netflix was doing that. They did with Cleopatra. They made Cleopatra black, things like that.
What are you guys doing? Goodness gracious.
But Vikings could have been a great show if it was written from the perspective of the Catholics that converted them.
Yeah.
Like that's where all of these shows fall apart, right? So like,
And
if you're showing
what's his name, Athelstan, the priest, had a little bit more backbone.
Dude, he doesn't even like within he winds up within like he doesn't even attempt to convert the Vikings that kidnap him. He just like goes along and just becomes Viking. It's like
he's a modern priest.
Yeah, it's just so unbelievable. Like he's holding he's keeping the Bibles, he's trying to keep it safe because it's so sacred to him. But then he just throws out these generic Bible lines when they're like sacrificing humans and stuff. He's just like, well, the Bible says there's a time to pray and a time to be sad. And it's like, what? Are you kidding me? This is ridiculous. This is not what any medieval monk would be saying in this situation,
I feel like, I mean, see, yeah, like this. I feel like Hollywood does one of two things when it comes to priests or monks and nuns, right? They're either like these milksops over here, or like basically like adulterers or perverts or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Just something in that category, broadly speaking. Or on the other extreme, they're like, this is the good extreme, like they're just like the epic boss exorcist priest who goes in there and just takes names and does etc., right? But rarely do you see, I would say, like a good accurate portrayal. So I'm thinking briefly, it's like a very brief scene, but you guys have had him on the show, Mel Gibson, right? In Braveheart. Do you remember in like the first major battle, there's like that quick 3-4 second scene where the monks are dragging like the wounded off the battlefield and stuff like that?
Oh, I never picked up on that.
Yeah, so monks would do that, or think of Saving Private Ryan, right? Like the priest who's out there doing last rites and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Those are epic priests. Where did they start marrying women? Like where did that start coming down?
You know what show did a good portrayal of that was the Pacific. So, or not the Pacific, it was what's the other one?
Band of Brothers.
Band of Brothers was, which one was Band of Brothers was Catholic, the Pacific was Protestant.
Oh, is that
So
what it was?
Band of Brothers was like the Northeast.
It was the
It
Irish
had,
and
like,
Italian.
It was the
from New
Irish and
York.
Italians from the Northeast, from like, you know, Philly and New York and all that, where the Pacific was the Midwest, and it took these kids from like Indiana and stuff like that. So you had in Band of Brothers, like you had priests on the battlefield saying mass on the hood of a Jeep and things like that, you know. It's actually a pretty interesting, because I watched that show like once every 2 or 3 years. Back to back, I'll watch Band of Brothers and then the Pacific, and I always pick up on the contrast.
Have you watched the new one?
No.
Masters of the Air. It's made by the same producers.
Is it any good?
Well, I haven't watched it yet. It's about the bombing campaigns over Europe.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was going to be any good. I saw it's on Apple TV, I think, right?
I'm not sure.
So if it's like in the era though that they're making of like what we're talking about DEI, is there at least like a trans woman pilot who's disabled?
Well, okay, so let's jump into that topic, because I think this summer, this June, is going to be the final Pride Month. Not that it'll be the final one, but I think last year they killed it, and I think
they went too far. Yeah,
they went too far, right? So we just saw an article came out that Target is getting rid of DEI. Not DEI. They're getting rid of their Pride displays. They're getting rid of some of their Pride displays in some of the stores. So I would guess they're still going to keep them in New York and California and, you know, the big the big cities and stuff, because people are so desensitized there. But I think more when you get into like the Midwest and things like that, you're not going to see any more of this stuff. So you had let's pull that story.
I have the
Target.
Okay,
so Target hang on, let's see. Okay, so Target confirmed Friday that it won't carry Pride Month merchandise at all stores in June after the discount retailer experienced a backlash and lower sales over its collection honoring the rainbow community. Target, which operates roughly 2,000 stores, said decisions about where to stock Pride-themed products, including adult apparel, home goods, food, and beverages, would be based on guest insights and consumer research. A Target spokesperson declined to disclose the number of stores where the merchandise will not be available. The company said its online shop would offer a full assortment. The moves were first reported by Bloomberg. Like last year, this thing went ballistic, right? So it really started with the Bud Light campaign with Dylan Mulvaney. Like, I really think Dylan Mulvaney killed Pride.
he did. I think he did.
He really did. He killed the rainbow movement. Like, people are just fed up with it. And once they saw they got some traction with Bud Light, that's the Target thing happened after that, and people really just came down on Target. And I really think people need to have a rule where if you see a rainbow near anything, you need to turn around and walk out of the store and go get that product somewhere else.
Oh, yeah, because nowadays that you can find so much on the web from like alternate economy that you can find like most of what you're wanting to look for.
Yeah,
and it's pretty epic. But yeah, I think you're right. I think he did kill it, because do you guys remember last year it wasn't as reported as the Bud Light stuff, but it was still fairly reported that Target was like, a lot of their products had like the satanic goat of Baphomet on it, and it was made, a lot of the designs were by Satanists and stuff like that. They were reported pretty widely in conservative media, but in their sections, like Target's always had, essentially since the Pride thing's been around, like a Pride section, but it was really last year they put it in the kids section, and they had those swimsuits for the trannies, and then they also had, you can look it up, these satanic goat of Baphomet shirts that would say Satan loves Pride, and they were selling these at their store. And I was like, well, thank you for coming out of the woodwork, and being honest for what we've been saying forever. And that caused a big ruckus, to say the least. And so I you gotta be smart. Like, that's the thing. Like, if you're trying to cater to this small percentage of the community, though, like increasing in my generation, it just doesn't work. People just don't want to be bombarded with 24/7. It's like 136 days now in the US calendar are devoted somehow to like the rainbow movement, whereas like veterans get like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
So it's
So,
ridiculous.
well, we were talking about this around the time I gave my talk, because just talking about the new religion that's popping up, it's actually pretty funny. I had my everybody over for Mother's Day. My in-laws came over and stuff, and we were in my backyard. And I was showing my in-laws my pond in the backyard with my Marian shrine back there. My brother-in-law was like, "What do you like? Come back here and pray?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's like exactly what I do." I'm like, yes, I sit on that chair and I pray a rosary right here. But we got into a conversation just talking about how all these religious thing, and I kind of went into my whole spiel that I gave at my talk, and just talking about how they got rid of Christianity, but look at what's replaced it. Like, there's no longer the crucifix. We ripped the crucifix down, and now a rainbow flag replaced it. And I kind of took them through like the liturgy of the rainbow movement, the George Floyd halo, and the white people kissing the feet during that whole thing. And I kind of took
our
them through
bishops
the whole
kneeling.
Yeah, so many
Yeah,
different things that, and the holy days of obligation was something I tried to point out. I'm like, look, you have to understand all the holidays that we think are just these secular holidays. I mean, Valentine's Day, Halloween, all these things. What do you
When he asked about praying in the chair.
I should have said that. Yeah, you don't. What are you, gay?
So true. So true.
When I took them through that and just showing, all the holidays, Christmas, Easter, Valentine's Day, Halloween, all these holidays that used to be actual holy days. These were our Christian holy days that became these secular things that we do, have been replaced now by, I think there's 100 and something different days that we celebrate. We have Black History Month. Now they want to do Jewish History Month. And now they want anything but something to do with Christianity. Like, and it really, I think it resonated a little bit with them, and then I kind of went into
need Jewish History Month when they tell you every chance they get how often they've been
well,
you'll find everybody gets a History Month except for white straight men. Right, that's the one.
But Catholics specifically have lost all of our cultural influence when it comes to this stuff. So all right. So leading into the next story, you have last week or the week before, you saw all these college campus protests, right? Now UNC had that one where you had the frat boys where like they were mocking the like they were doing the monkey thing and everything. Like, those kids got in trouble for doing that, but that school, UNC, and there's several different colleges doing it. So UNC Chapel Hill trustees moved to divert diversity program funds to police. Like, they defunded DEI and funded police. This is the defund the police movement. Oh man, let me see. I think I got it on there we go. I think I got it on a paid site. So UNC Chapel Hill. No, it's on a paid site. I gotta find it on a different one.
UNC Chapel Hill, though, that was the hill with the frat dudes who were holding up the flag, right?
Yeah.
From being desecrated. Yeah, those guys were chads.
All right, so UNC Chapel Hill Board of Trustees voted to, you see, it's gonna be okay. Voted to divert millions of dollars spent on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs into public safety instead, ahead of an expected policy change statewide to restrict DEI. At a special meeting Monday morning, the board unanimously moved to reallocate the $2.3 million that the university spends on DEI programs toward police and other public safety measures as part of its annual budget approval process. The university's operating budget totaled more than $4 billion in the
Dang.
University had a $4 billion.
Really?
Oh, great, Rob. Just show us all this. It's
your site.
They have a $4 billion budget.
That's just their operating budget too. That's not like an endowment.
So is that like the whole university?
Okay,
Man,
all
why
Right,
is there
this site's gotta go. Yeah, dude,
so many
that's how does a college have a $4 billion operating?
That's not even that's like just your average college.
$4 billion a year for an operating budget. That seems insane to me. What could they possibly? I guess like the campus. It's I don't know. That is
So like
crazy. Man.
the University of Minnesota's annual operating budget in 2020, 4.2 billion.
That's nuts.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of people say that like those guys were like there to support the state of Israel. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. It's like I say this all the time on my show and on my social media outlets. I don't really care so much who you support in this conflict because I'm an American. I'm just like, let's just stay out of it. But the one thing I was at least happy with these dudes, and we can debate it if you want, but like, was that at least they were like keeping the flag up from off the ground. I don't really care who you are.
But either way, it goes to show you that there's a line that, because when you saw during 2020, you had let's just say those who would typically support Israel were behind the Black Lives Matter movement, right?
Oh yeah.
Those who would typically support the, Zionist causes were behind all of that stuff. And I think now they kind of
at the same time, though, those who supported Palestine were also behind that.
Right. But I think the typical liberal Jewish person thought they were on the same side as your everyday liberal. And now that they're seeing the monster that has been created, they're like, whoa, chill out. We're going to end this stuff now. Because they see the monster that this thing is. This is so like, I see on the right, a lot of people, take the Nick Fuentes route and go and attack Israel that way. Right. But at the same time, you don't want to jump on the same, like the kids protesting at colleges, supporting Hamas and stuff. Like they're insane, those people.
That's the thing. Like, I mean, again, I'm not justifying everything that the frat dudes were doing, but what I am saying is like a lot of those students were anti-American activists who were very much so funded by George Soros and would have loved nothing more to rip down Old Glory and burn it. You can call me like a, Bible thumping American lover. But it's just like, I mean, at least I have the virtue of patriotism, which is right up next to religion and filial piety to your family. If we're all Catholics here, patriotism is one of the top 3 big virtues on a natural level. But it's just like those.
Nick is gonna die hard. It's like it doesn't want to go the wasp in you, bud.
No, it's just like it's just like my family's done a lot for the United States, and I'll do whatever I can for the United States. But it's like, it's like I'm not justifying what they did, but you're right. I think the big disconnect in the left, because you see them schisming pretty hardcore right now, and I'm actually happy that they are, because I think it's going to help us win this next election, is older Dems, right, are kind of part of that broader pro-State of Israel group, mostly because, they're closer in proximity to 1948, right? Even if they're in the boomer age, they're still closer in proximity. Whereas the younger, particularly if you're in a minority group, particularly African Americans, are very much so anti-State of Israel. Right. And so you're seeing this schism to where a lot of these liberal commentators who have been, like, say, bashing Trump for the last 7 years are now singing a very different tune because they're very confused. And what's hilarious is that these are the same people who for years have been like, it's going to be the youth that's going to help transform the United States. And now they're like, why is the youth so, unhinged? I don't understand.
Nick, there's something so real about what you're saying right now. So you see it even in my Catholic friends, right? So I kind of find myself in I think Jack Posobiec tweeted this out today, talking about he was calling us centennials, those born between 81 and 90. So if you're born 81 and 90, they call them zillennials, or he's calling us centennials. We're like the last of the analog age before the digital fully kicks in, right?
Yeah.
So
we still remember cassettes, barely.
Yeah, exactly. So my generation, I'm kind of like caught right in between. So if you look at guys like Gavin Ashenden and the older Catholics, you can see they're very pro-Israel. Even a guy like, we're going to talk about Jordan Peterson. I think guys in that older age bracket are very pro-Israel because the propaganda after World War II was so heavy. I mean, you had movies like Schindler's List coming out. You had Sophie's Choice coming out. You had all of this. And I'm not saying propaganda is bad even. I'm just saying after World War II, you had this push to really make sure everybody knew the atrocities that happened during World War II. Now, growing up, I still saw some of that, right? And now, because I'm kind of caught in this in-between phase, like I'll throw some jabs at Israel, but I'm also still a little hesitant because I still, I grew up learning about the atrocities of that whole thing. But then you see this younger generation is just so adamantly anti state of Israel, like it really is an age thing that I'm seeing, and I'm kind of caught in the middle of it. It's a strange thing to witness on all sides.
Yeah, no, it is weird. And I think you do see like this also in the world of the right, like the right wing, but I think the right wing's discussion is not so much like pro versus anti-Israel for the most part. I think it's mostly based around the question of just like how much should we be involved?
Yeah.
Because it's like this. Yes. Does the
100%
Holy
right.
Land belong to the Catholic Church? Yes, it does. Right. All the holy sites are there in the time of our Lord, and in Nick's perfect world, right, the Kingdom of Jerusalem would still be around and it'd be epic, etc. But and so therefore, when you read a lot of these quotations, like particularly by Pius X, and they're asking questions like, do the Jews deserve their own chosen land, right? And he's saying no, right? We should be there baptizing, etc., etc. Right? I agree with all this. Now, post 1948, what do? Right? You have all these millions of people move in. There's millions and millions more. And now several generations later, right? I don't even know how many generations it would be since 1948, but at least 4 or 5, right? You have an established culture there. So what do? Do you move them all out? Like, where do they all go? Do you want to come to the United States and live in the deep South? Do you want them to live all in New York? Like, where do you want them to live? Or you want them to go back to Poland? Like, a lot of them were born there. So what do? My thought is it's just like, all right, State of Israel does a lot of wrong because every society does a lot of wrong.
Yeah.
I'm sure it does some right because a lot of societies do a lot of right.
I mean, they're no worse than the state of America.
Yeah. I mean, I would just like, I have no attachment to them on a religious basis anymore. I used to, because like way back in the day, I was an evangelical dispensationalist. But the way I look at it now is it's just like, look, if they want to do their thing, they do their thing. But let us not be involved. That's my old school isolationistic America first policy of just let's focus in on America.
It was hard. It was hard.
That's funny.
I had to dig through your wife's Facebook.
My point is just like, let's just stay out of the conflict. I think criticisms are fine, but my issue is whenever I see a lot of Catholics who actually go so far in their criticism where they're like, you know what, maybe Hamas is based. I'm just like, are you insane? Like, it's two antichrist religions duking it out. Why should we pick sides? Why don't we pray for peace and have our tax dollars here in the United States?
Yeah, I care about the Palestinian Christians.
Yeah, and I care about the Jewish Christian. I care about all Christians. I'm like, I don't care what side of that border you're on. Like,
look,
it's
to be
horrible.
fair, it's very hard to become an Israeli citizen as a Christian.
Yeah, for sure.
Far harder than a Palestinian.
For sure. Yeah. My point is, it's just like, you have two religions that don't profess Christ, right? Duking it out over there. Why should we be involved?
Yeah, this is one of those topics. I wrote something the other day. I said, no matter what you do, somebody will accuse you of being cringe. And it's because it's funny, Nick, the conversation me and you had the other day about discussing Pearl and Trent. Mm-hmm. I had a barrage of people, half of them coming in saying I was too soft on it and I didn't go hard enough. And the other half coming in saying I was a misogynist and all this. It's like,
and me on the outside, just glad I wasn't involved.
Rob's like, I was happy I was fishing.
I caught more grief on Twitter than I did on YouTube, because I think I explained myself better on YouTube. But it goes to the same thing with this topic as it does kind of with the men's attitude towards women thing, where I think I'm very influenced by the younger guys, where if you look towards the older generation, they were very saturated in feminism. And I'm kind of caught in the middle. And then this younger generation is just so anti-feminist. They just like hate women in general. And I'm kind of in this like in-between phase where I'm like, all right, guys, you got to settle down a little bit there,
That's the issue.
Depends on what
the specific is.
on if your
I-
wife's asked you to hang something that day or not.
Oh yeah.
That's so funny. I just try to look at things. I can genuinely say this. I'm trying to look at things through the lens of what would Christ want, right? And we know that war is a sin, right? Outside of like a just war context, like war is a sin. And Christ does talk about blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of peace. He talks about praying for your enemies, etc. And I see way more Catholics online like duking this out in a conflict that I don't even think we should be involved in, rather than being like, are you praying for peace? Like, genuine question to the audience. It's like, are you praying the rosary every day? So as Our Lady of Fatima said, we just celebrated her feast day yesterday, that it can establish world peace in the world. Or are we spending more time just being like, how red-pilled can I get? Because trust me, here's the thing. Your kids are going to be red-pilled, but maybe potentially in another way if you go too far.
Well,
Yeah,
also
always
you have to think. Well, first off, Monica, I have to address this. No, I'm absolutely not an Andrew Tate fan. Like, not at all in any way. I do think, like me and Nick discussed, I think that when people are debating Pearl, they don't concede enough to her valid points. She makes a lot of valid points about how awful a lot of modern women can be. Doesn't mean all women. It means modern women can be very awful. But I don't even want to get into that. But man, I lost my train of thought. What was the last thing you just said?
Oh, it was just that, like,
Your kids will be more red-pilled than you.
yeah,
but in a
like
different way.
these pendulum swings.
Oh,
Unless
okay. Did you ever see the meme it shows the souls in hell, but it says, "But I was based."
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
That's a
I
good
think
meme.
of that all the time because I'm always trolling on Twitter, right? And like, I don't want to be that guy. I really don't. But I was there.
But it was funny.
I was making a joke. It's like the Lord is not going to look kindly upon my humor, you know.
The thing is it's like, you know, when I became Catholic, I had a priest who just said, like, Christ is the mean between all extremes. And I agree. Like, he's not a milksop, but he's also not like this person over here who's like this, you know, chauvinist, like Chad, if you will, who's also a milksop, but just in the reverse position. Like, both are feminine. Like, Christ wants at the end of the day for people to be connected with him on a spiritual level. That's why, like, the striving for a good interior life is why we're on this earth. Like, God created us not because he needed you. Like, St. Francis of Sales goes so as far as to say, like, in meditation, that you should think about how useless you are to God. Like, you are completely useless because God does not need you, but he creates you to share his goodness. Like, the reason he created you is so that he could pour goodness and love out on you. So are you going to go therefore and live that? Or are you going to be like, how, like, red-pilled, how out of Plato's cave can I be to the world online? And I think that that's what so many people do.
You know what I was thinking about today was sometimes when I go to confession, I will
Rage at the women in front of you.
no, well, that yes. Sometimes I'll strong arm a priest or two. I will try to make my sins not sound as bad as they are.
Yeah, there's like a veiling in language that can be a bit like more. It can acquiesce your pride. It doesn't tear you down.
I was really thinking about this today, and I was, because I really think I was like, I veil, to, you know, almost like you're worried, but, and it's like, okay, so what should I do? I should be just going into confession and being like, Father, I'm a wretch. I am addicted to my phone. I am vainglorious. I like all these things. And it's like, okay, but if I do that, am I doing that? It's very tricky. You know, you could be virtue signaling in the confessional, or you could be hiding your sin in the confessional. That's why I really do love the screen. Right?
Yeah.
Those face-to-face confessions are awful. I really do think that, like, I don't know if I do enough of an examination of conscience before I go into the confessional. The last couple of times I went, I think I really need to do one.
Now, just think of this, Anthony. The bigger the show becomes, the more priests are going to know you just because of the voice behind the screen.
My voice. You'll know just my voice, right?
Yep.
I've been
Yeah,
fortunate so far. I don't think any of the priests that I have come in contact with have, or they haven't said anything at least.
I honestly, from all the priests that I've talked to, because I really do find the science of the confessional fascinating. All the priests that I talk to, the vast majority will say they don't recognize your name and they don't remember anything because there
Yeah.
is supernatural graces that take place there. But I think you're right. I think that like it's very easy for people who don't want to be caught, right? Especially if they're like habitual sinners, right? They'll just bounce around from priest to priest to priest to priest, right? Then there's no real sincere amendment of life. And then when they are confessing, they'll veil their language in ambiguity. So they'll be like, Father, I was impure.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
like,
That's what I
does that
mean, right?
what does that
Yeah,
mean?
that,
Because like, there's
I
legitimate.
was impatient with my wife
Yeah, exactly. And it
without being
doesn't.
specific. Like I lost my mind. Like I
Yeah.
went crazy, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, and I hated your last show, random priest.
Well, Nick, really quick. I know you were about to say something, but what you were saying about the bouncing from priest to priest, the talk with an Aussie accent, the priest will think it's Matt Bradley's confessional.
Oh, that's
the
funny.
the one time I was going regularly to the same confessor was that Chinese priest, and because I had gone to him a few times and confessed the same thing, he gave me a penance that actually rooted that sin out. So
Exactly. Yeah.
and I've done the bounce from priest to priest thing where it's one it could be convenient, or it could be because you don't want to go see your regular priest to confess the sin you're going to confess. And I do think a regular confessor is the best route to go, because that's the only way the priest gets to know what you're struggling with and can actually help you root that thing out.
Yeah, I agree. It's like if you can find a good one, go to that. But man, it's just so like pride it's the root of all vice, and you just gotta tear it down. Now, I'll warn people like if you pray to the Lord, Lord, make me humble or help me grow in humility, bro, he's going to give you a cross. Like that's a dangerous prayer in a good way, but it's a dangerous prayer because he's going to give you a cross, and that cross feel like it's going to crush you, and then you're going to be like, wow, this whole Catholic life, particularly if you're an influencer, right? This whole Catholic life that I'm kind of putting out there to try to help people, so much of it I'm doing on myself and for myself as opposed to the cross of Christ. And so that cross is going to try to crush you, but then that's when you're going to be like, Lord, please save me. I'm drowning
gonna
here.
tell you, so like early on in my conversion, that happened where I started asking God for humility, and at work we lost the contract that I was the supervisor of. And
Yeah.
I went from being the supervisor of like the biggest project at the company to losing that contract, and I went to being like a laborer essentially.
Dang.
And it was the hardest thing I ever went through. I was so depressed. I remember I love my job, my job itself. Like I actually do enjoy working with guys and talking with them, and being able to be outside and things like that. The things I hate are like the commute and things like that, but I also love running a project. Like the bigger the project, the more alive I feel at work. When I'm doing kind of monotonous, boring stuff and that's easier, I kind of get a little depressed. I went back to being just like a laborer for a good year and a half, and I just remember really having to accept that without complaining, because I could have went to my boss and been like, I've been here longer, take this guy out of that position, let me get it. I could have fought for somebody else's job in that moment. And I just remember it was like God was telling me, just shut up and be grateful. Your pay hasn't changed. Just go do your job and recognize that you're not special. And I had to, like, it was a good year and a half before like a new contract picked up and I was able to get that. And it was such a humiliating experience for me, and having to keep my mouth shut and watch other guys advance when I was just stuck in this low place. It really is hard when you're at this peak and your pride is where, you think who the hell you are. And then you just get humbled and put down, and you remember how like, oh man, I'm really nobody.
Like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like when the saints are saying, like, just think about how utterly useless you are to God. Like that just, and that's, I'm straight up quoting him. Like we're useless to God because God does not need us at all. Like existence itself flows out from him. And the fact that he uses us is already in some form of a miracle. But like, if you guys want, unless you have any more like discussions you want to do here, we want to jump over to locals. But like a good transition to that is like people out of the ordinary get used for God's glory, right? And sometimes he tears them down. And I think that's a good segue into talking about like Jordan Peterson's kind of unique train rail, if you will, into the Catholic faith. Like, I know he's going to convert. His wife's praying the rosary, people praying for him. He's going to convert.
Okay, so okay, wait. I want to, before we go over there, I'm going to tell you what. Okay, so somebody said, Daniel L said, watching Jordan Peterson on Pints with Aquinas, really disappointing. When Matt rightly pressed Jordan on how he obfuscates his answer to, do you believe in God or anything like God? He just does it again. That's not a valid question. How the hell do you know that? The Bible talks about faith as acceptance of something revealed to you as true and requires a commitment based on that faith. If you don't at first accept that something revealed to you is true, which is belief, then how the hell can you act as if God exists? That isn't valid. So that's what he said. And I said, completely disagree with this take. I cut a few clips and I would like to discuss them. So Rob said in the green room, he's like, I really don't get the fascination that everybody has with Jordan Peterson. Like Rob hates everybody. You're muted, Rob. You're muted.
I've never heard him say anything that sounded profound to me. It all just sounded like, well, yeah, no, duh.
Well,
like,
he does a lot of psychologizing of things, right?
He's a clinical psychologist.
He's a clinical psychologist. I do like some of his biblical lecture series that are coming from a psychological perspective, and he's always talking about going out and facing the adventure and things like that. And part of starting this podcast was that it's like, let's jump into like, Rob, if you remember that phone call I made to you when I was with Nicole up at that campsite, where Rob and I were just doing trivia and stuff. And I was up at this campsite, and on the way up, we were listening to something by Jordan Peterson. He was like, like, do the damn adventure. And I remember calling Rob from that trip. And I was like, dude, let's do something different. Like, let's start talking about some deeper stuff. And that's when we did the Danielic Mystery series and all that stuff and started getting guests on. So, I mean, it's
so what you're saying is that Jordan Peterson, he's the zeitgeist.
No. We're not.
No. But he did inspire me to challenge myself a little bit, and just from a very secular psychological perspective. But everybody hates that he doesn't answer the question when they ask him, do you believe in God? I like his answer. I do. And I'm going to play the clips of what I like about it because it's very interesting. But also, Matt Fradd chose to go the route of playing devil's advocate in this interview, and he played the part of an atheist. But through playing that part of the atheist, I'm picking up, and this is not a knock to Matt, I'm picking up subtleties of Matt's struggles with what's going on in the church right now, right? Like, he's not coming right out and saying things, but I know the past decade have been tumultuous and very difficult for a lot of people who are very confident in their faith under Benedict and John Paul II. And then Francis comes along and all these things happen. And, Matt said at one point, he's like, I'm totally open to the possibility that the Catholic Church is the most corrupt institution in the history of the world. Like, that's what he said. And Jordan was like, whoa, no, they got some stiff competition. They're not the most corrupt, don't worry. But there's a couple of things that Matt says that I think that Matt is struggling. And one particular question that he asked me, he goes, do you ever think that people want you to come to their side to kind of reaffirm them in something that they're doubting? And we'll play the clip, but I was like, ooh, that sounds like Matt is really saying something from his heart there. It doesn't sound like he's playing devil's advocate. It sounds like he's really struggling with something, and it's coming out in a question that he's hoping Jordan will confirm him in his faith and tell him he's not correct. Like, I really think Matt liked having Jordan on because Jordan comes at it from a perspective that's not your typical Catholic apologist. We've heard the Catholic Answers thing so many times. We've even heard the Scott Hahn thing so many times that to hear somebody coming from an outside perspective talk about God in a way that's kind of new to us, which isn't really new. He's kind of throwing a lot of Jung in there and things like that, but it's new to the people that have never heard these perspectives before, and it's a little exciting for people. I think he's turned a lot of people on to Christianity.
Yeah, he's an interesting fellow. I mean, I remember starting to watch him back in 2014 when I was a wee 16-year-old because, time flies. And I remember thinking at the time, like, he just has a lot of really simple and profound things. He's an interesting person because on the one hand, like, so much of what he says, you're right, Rob. It's just like common sense. You should know this. But that's the thing we're lacking in the United States. It's like just a bunch of like where the dads just beating common sense, if you will, into their sons. Like it's
Yeah.
just this massive absence. So I think that's partially why it really took off. My criticisms of him are like, I think on the one hand, and we'll talk about this when we get into it, like he approaches the faith from a very unique perspective, which I think has its place. But I think where my concern comes is if like they dogmatize what he says as like the Catholic faith or as like a reinterpretation. Cause like what someone said in the comments, but yeah, like some of his points are literally taken straight out of like Pius X's Bashindi condemning modernism. I was like, yeah, that's fair. So
well, look, okay, so Matt asked him, okay, so he doesn't like to answer, do you believe in God? But Matt did ask him, what do you say to someone who says that Jesus wasn't a historical person and he was just and he goes into a thorough defense of the historicity of the man Jesus and his actual existence. He then goes into an explanation of how the biblical story could never have been created by a human being because it's just so incredibly complex, right? So he believes, oh boy. Oh my
You're streaming live right now on
Censored
TV.
Goodness. No way. Wait, do you have a free Censored TV subscription now?
No, I literally just paid $12 for this.
Okay, because I pay for it. I'm like, if he gave you a free one and I got to pay for it, I'm killing it.
No, I just had to pay for that.
Oh, I thought you were going to show the clip. I thought you were going to show it.
I feel wrong doing because it is paid. I'd feel wrong. Like,
that's fair.
No, you can play a little clip of it. Let's hear his impression of me. I want to hear his impression of me.
Okay, let's
in this thing. Does that inspire you to do anything? Like, nobody hangs posters on their walls of these rap dudes. And if you do, you're even sicker in the head than most of the people that would just be like boop, bop, bebop, boop, boop, rapping along to it. So it all makes me sick. But like, really, there used to be a skill like playing guitar. And you would have a couple of kids at the school that bring their guitar in and they'd play like Kumbaya or whatever. And it was funny. And I don't know, that's a way to like romance.
Oh, hit the nail on the head.
He hasn't gotten to the part with me yet.
I am going to watch that show tomorrow and cut clips from it, and that thing is going to be clipped and sent all over our channel, man. We are going to make shorts out of that. Ryan, first off, he's one of my favorite people that I've met, man. Like me and him have just hit it off so much. I saw him accidentally at Mass one day. The first time, so I've been watching Gavin for years. And one day at Mass, I see this Japanese kid, and I'm like, that looks like Ryan Katsu Rivera. I'm like, there's no way. Like, there's no way. And I didn't want to just go up to some random Japanese
guy. Goes up to him and starts doing a Chinese impression.
So I wound up hitting him up on Twitter, and I was like I saw him interact. I'm like, hey Ryan, do you happen to be at a Latin Mass on Long Island last week? And he's like, yes, sir. And we just started talking, and then I met him at Mass, and now we're friends, man. It's so wild the friends we've made with this show, man.
Mm-hmm.
Just random people that it's just.
For the record, it's not a Rob impression.
Rob is actually on with Ryan. Yeah, they're doing an Avoiding Babylon episode.
I had to talk to him as Anthony.
Yes. You guys need to send me this somehow. I don't care.
Oh, man. All right. So go subscribe to censored.tv and watch Ryan's Celebrity Mailbag
it's just
episode.
1 month for this one thing.
Yeah.
$12. It's worth
it. For $12, you guys will get to see a month's worth of Gavin McInnes episodes. I think Elijah Schaefer's on there, and you'll get to see Ryan do an Anthony impression for an episode.
Can Ryan do an Anthony impression of Anthony doing a Chinese impression?
That's fair. That's a true test right there.
Oh, man. All right, so we're going to go jump over and we're going to talk Jordan Peterson. I got some clips to play, and yeah, guys, go join our locals, man. Come on. We kill ourselves doing this.
Anthony wants to be able to own firearms and get out of his state.
I really do. That is my dream.
Him. Please help.
That is my dream. It's either that or we sell our souls and go work for the Daily Wire one day. One or the other.
Don.
have to cancel my AV locals for 2 months and pay for it.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh man, I'll give you my sign in, Don. Don't worry. All right, we're going over to locals, guys. Please support us. Don't forget, if you guys can, go to Catholic Palooza. It's July 27th. Go buy tickets. Use code AB27.
Have we been
And then-
given the go ahead to talk about the February thing yet?
And February 8th, Rob and I are both going to be in North Carolina. We'll have details for that. That one we're trying to, so they do same thing, like they're doing a $40 ticket. And Rob and I are trying to get them to do like a VIP ticket for those who want to hang out after the conference. And I'm trying to get them to do like an after conference hang where like we all go out together and go do something, whether that's go get beers or something like that.
That's just because Anthony wants people to buy him drinks.
Oh, I really just want to hang out. I want to meet people. Like that's the whole thing with Catholic Palooza too. Like I love meeting people and just hanging out and talking with people. Like I'm not crazy about public speaking. This is not public speaking. Like standing up in front of an audience and giving a talk. I mean, I'll do it, but it's not like my forte. So, all right, guys, go to locals. We'll see you guys on the other side. Rob, I'm going to go get water, so leave the screen blank until I get back down.
Okay.